The Manistee's life on the Great Lakes is over. The once proud vessel that was for years a mainstay on the Great Lakes has been sold for scrap. After years of sitting laid up in Toledo, awaiting an uncertain future, the Grim Reaper has come knocking. Once escorted out of the Maumee River by a trio of G-tugs, a single large tugboat will tow the ailing vessel to her final destination of Port Colborne, Ontario, Canada, where she will be slowly cut down and recycled. However, this is not just the story of the Manistee's final voyage. This is the story of a Great Lakes freighter. To cover that story, one must go all the way back to the beginning, when the vessel was constructed, during a different era in American history, an era where great wars were being fought, and America needed to supply the world with materials to help win in the fight against evil and tyranny. All photos in the featured video are used with permission by the owners listed. All photos are owned by said individuals and are not claimed to be owned by myself and are solely used for the production of this video. The Type L6 ship is a United States Maritime Administration designation for a World War II-era Great Lakes dry break bulk cargo ship. The L-type Great Lakes dry bulk cargo ships were built in 1943 to carry much-needed iron ore from the upper Great Lakes to the steel and iron production facilities on Lakes Erie and Ontario to support the war effort. The L6 ships were built by two companies, American Shipbuilding Company in the case of the L6SA1 models, of which 6 were built, and Great Lakes Engineering Works in Ashtabula, Ohio, and Great Lakes Engineering Works in River Rouge, Ohio, in the case of the Type L6SB1, which produced 10 ships. Each L6 class ship cost roughly $2.2 million each. The first L6SB1 class built was the SS Adirondack, hull number 290. Her keel was laid on March 9, 1942, and was later launched on September 19, 1942. Delivered to the Reiss Steamship Company on May 25, 1943, the Adirondack was renamed shortly after her delivery on May 28, and was rechristened as the second Richard J. Reiss at the company's home port of Sheboygan, Wisconsin. In exchange for this new tonnage, the Reiss Company was required to turn over to the U.S. Maritime Commission older obsolete vessels. These older vessels were the steamers Superior, the first Richard J. Reiss, and the Alex B. Ulrich. Both of these vessels were scrapped shortly after the war. The new Richard J. Reiss, as built, was powered by a 2,500 horsepower triple expansion steam engine fed by a pair of coal-fired water tube boilers. In 1964, 21 years after her delivery, the Reiss received her first major modifications when she was converted to a self-unloading vessel. Her 16 hatches feed into 6 compartments, where she is capable of carrying 14,900 tons and her maximum midsummer draft of 24 feet 7 inches. She is equipped with a 250-foot bow-mounted self-unloading discharge boom that can be swung 105 degrees to port or starboard, which reduced unloading times from days by clamshell bucket to mere hours. In addition to hauling coal, she also hauled other bulk commodities such as limestone and iron ore. On June 27, 1969, the Reiss Coal Company sold all of its vessel assets to American Steamship for a price of $10.5 million. However, the Reiss fleet continued to operate as a separate entity. In 1976, the Reiss had her original steam power plant replaced with a 2,950 horsepower diesel engine and also received a bow thruster. The Reiss Steamship Company continued to operate as a separate entity until July 23, 1986, when Reiss Steamship was outright merged into the American Steamship fleet. The Richard J. Reiss was then chartered to the Erie Sand Steamship Company, which was managed by Erie Sand and Gravel Company out of Erie, Pennsylvania. That same year, who shortened her name to Richard Reiss at that time. Some say the name was shortened because crews believed it was unlucky for a vessel to sail with a 13-letter name. As a whole, the Reiss's career was largely uneventful. A few incidents occurred while named the Richard J. Reiss. The Reiss was pushed ashore by ice while backing from Stoneport, Michigan on March 30, 1971, and suffered minor bottom damage. She later snapped cables during a blizzard and gale 2 years later at Stoneport on December 15, 1973, and was blown into the rocks. She suffered a 28-inch long crack along the waterline on April 8, 1982, in ice in the Straits of Mackinac that was later repaired. Her last major incident occurred as the Richard Reiss in mid-1994 with the collapse of the unloading boom while unloading in Fairport. A second-hand boom was installed shortly after returning the veteran vessel to service. On December 18, 2001, the Reiss entered what was expected to be a normal winter layup at Erie, Pennsylvania. Later that winter, in January 2002, the Erie Sand and Gravel Company, including the Reiss, was purchased by the Ogilvie Norton Company. Ships sailing in the Ogilvie Norton fleet took over the routes normally served by the Reiss, which kept the freighter in layup. As Ogilvie Norton struggled through financial difficulties in 2003 and 2004, the vessel was sold to Grand River Navigation in January of 2004 for $1.8 million. She was reflagged as a Canadian vessel and added to Lower Lakes Transportation's fleet for the upcoming season. The new owners kept the Reiss name and paint scheme for the 2004 season, with only the stack being painted in the Grand River Navigation colors. On December 17, 2004, the Reiss entered the Bay Ship Graving Dock at Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, for its 5-year inspection and was painted in the Lower Lakes Grand River Navigation colors. Emerging from dry dock on December 30, 2004, the Richard Reiss proceeded to Sarnia, Ontario, where on March 14, 2005, her new name, Manistee, was painted onto her hull. Of historical significance, this renaming ends an era of almost 100 years of the Reiss name appearing on the hull of a vessel on the Great Lakes. She would join sister L6SB1 class vessel Mississauga, formerly the Hill Annex and later George A. Sloan, and the last L6SA1 class vessel, Cuyahoga, formerly the Mesabi and later J. Burton Ayers. By the end of the decade, Lower Lakes would later own all 4 remaining L6 class bulk cargo ships. The Manistee would serve the Lower Lakes fleet faithfully for just over a decade. But years of hard use and minimal maintenance began to take their toll as the vessel's age slowly began to appear evident. Her once proud paint began to wear, and rust started streaking down the side of her hull. By late 2015, it was announced that the Manistee would be put into long-term layup in Toledo, Ohio, to await an uncertain fate. Old and worn, her pilothouse windows would be covered up, and the boat tied down at the former Hocking Valley dock next to Interstate 280 on the Maumee River. She sat and silently waited for her time to come. In 2017, she was joined by her newest fleetmate, the former American Valor, a AAA class vessel that hasn't sailed since 2008. On May 15, 2020, it was announced that Lower Lakes parent company, Rand Logistics, purchased American Steamship Company, which would end up sealing the fate of the aging Lower Lakes vessels. The Mississauga, the last L6SB1 in service, would sail her final voyage in early 2021 to Sarnia, Ontario, where she would be stripped of all usable parts and equipment. Later that year, she would be sold to Purvis Marine Recycling in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario for scrapping and towed in November of 2021. Prior to the Mississauga being towed, it was announced that her sister ship, the Manistee, and fleetmate St. Clair had been sold to the International Marine Salvage Corporation in Port Colborne, Ontario. While crews were able to get the fire-damaged St. Clair out of Toledo in time before winter set in, the Manistee would be forced to wait through another winter season before she could be towed. On March 28, 2022, the Manistee was removed from her longtime berth at the Hocking Valley Dock in Toledo by the tug Beverly MI. Assisting were the G tugs Michigan, Massachusetts, and Colorado. Many spectators were on hand to get their final glimpses of the Manistee before she was gone forever. While attempting to enter Lake Erie, the Manistee ran aground on a sandbar at the mouth of the Maumee River due to currents and strong winds. The tugs later got her free, and the mournful trip resumed. The Manistee, under tow, arrived at Port Colborne on the 30th of March, and at 79 years old has sailed her final voyage on the freshwater inland seas. She currently sits at Port Colborne, awaiting her time to be cut up.